Today, President Trump and his White House have a decision to make, and it's a big one, whether or not they will participate in the House Judiciary impeachment inquiry. The deadline for that very decision is now just a couple hours away, as Democrats are expected to work through this weekend deciding what those articles of impeachment will look like. And while we still don't know the specifics here, potential charges could include abuse of power, bribery, obstruction of Congress, and obstruction of justice. So let's go to our senior White House correspondent, Pamela Brown, with more. And so, Pamela, do we have any hints whatsoever as to which way the White House will go on this?
Well, at this point, Brooke, all indications are that the White House will be responding to Jerry Nadler's letter by the deadline at 5 p.m. today and will likely not be participating in this next hearing that is expected to happen on Monday with 4 lawyers from 2 different committees. So that is the expectation as of now. We're being told there are no big surprises in this, and there is no indication, Brooke, that Jerry Nadler has reached out to the White House directly to answer some of those questions that the White House had put in the previous letter from Sunday night when it said it wouldn't be participating in that first hearing. The White House had asked for information like which specific rights the president would have and his legal team, which witnesses and so forth. Now, it is true that Jerry Nadler did put out that press release yesterday outlining some of the basics for this hearing, this upcoming hearing on Monday. But here at the White House, the view seems to be that it is not satisfied with the response so far from Jerry Nadler. But at the same time, Brooke, this also comes down to the fact that the White House doesn't want to legitimize this process by participating. As you know, it's continually called the impeachment probe and the House a sham, baseless, partisan. And so the concern is that if it did participate and accept this invitation from Jerry Nadler, that it would legitimize it. Of course, the Democrats say this is a legitimate inquiry. This has to do with the Constitution. Democrats believe that the president abused the power of his office. But the White House is very much looking ahead to the Senate trial, Brooke, where it believes it can more effectively make its case in a friendlier venue with the Republican majority. It believes it'll score more political points there and be able to distract from the central allegations surrounding the president. I do also want to note here, Brooke, that the president just recently tweeted about something else that's happening today. And of course, that is the shooting at that base in Pensacola, where the suspect is believed to be a Saudi national who was there for Saudi military training. The president, as you see here on the screen, Brooke, tweeted that King Salman of Saudi Arabia just called to express his sincere condolences and give his sympathies to the families and friends of the warriors who were killed and wounded in that attack that took place in Pensacola, Florida. Brooke?
All right, Pamela. Thank you. Back to what's happening there in Washington. And just a reminder, the full House vote on impeachment is only the first step. Then, of course, there is the Senate trial. And while the Republican-led chamber is expected to vigorously defend the president, how they do that is still up for debate. At least one top Republican, John Cornyn of Texas, is pushing back on a White House suggestion that live witnesses be part of the process, saying that it could turn the impeachment trial into, in Cornyn's words, a 3-ring circus. Let's discuss all of this. Melanie Zanona is a congressional reporter for Politico, and Stephen Griffin is a professor of constitutional law at Tulane University. So welcome to both of you. And Melanie, let's start on the Senate side. So Senate Republicans, they don't just have to manage expectations for the Trump administration. There's also their counterparts in the House. In your latest piece, the headline is Senate Republicans puncture House Republican dreams for impeachment trial. And you write in part that House Republicans recognize that some of their Senate colleagues might not be comfortable with the kind of scorched earth defense tactics that they practice in the lower chamber. So what are some of those House tactics or demands that have these, some of these senators saying, we're not going there?
Yeah, well, Trump and his allies have been calling to haul in witnesses that they think will be friendly to them or it can help build their case. And they want to haul in Adam Schiff. They want to bring in Hunter Biden. They want to bring in the whistleblower. But reality check for them, that's not going to happen in the Senate because GOP leaders don't want this to turn into a circus. Mitch McConnell is defending a very tough map in 2020. These vulnerable members don't want this to look like a spectacle. They need a very thoughtful and serious proceeding before they cast this historic vote. And the other reality here is that even if they wanted to follow the hardline tactics of the House, they probably don't have the votes to do that because they can only lose 3 Republican senators for anything they want to do. So it's going to be very tough for them to fulfill this Trump wish list of witnesses.
Now, and this, Stephen, this is directed to you. Again, this is all in hypothetical world. Let's say Senate Republicans do decide to call the Bidens as witnesses. Walk us through what would have to happen for the former vice president and his son to actually show up and testify.
Well, I assume that they would show up to testify, that they would comply with any subpoena. But I think the thing that House Republicans might be overlooking is that that gives, or should give, the House managers the equal right to call their own witnesses. And after all, the House Intelligence Committee report had a list of 12 witnesses that the Democrats still want to hear from, and I assume they would be perfectly happy to call those in the Senate. And I think Republicans have to think about that if they want to get into calling witnesses.
Again, that's looking ahead to the trial in the Senate. What about now with these articles on House Judiciary? Stephen, what's the strongest article of impeachment that Democrats should really focus on?
Well, I think that the testimony of the 3 Democratic experts was particularly powerful on the idea of abuse of power. But I think it hasn't been sufficiently appreciated that this poses a real challenge for Democrats, a historical challenge and a practical challenge. The historical challenge is that past impeachments really have been assembled around the spine, so to speak, of the criminal law. And assembling an abuse of power challenge, as Professor Turley, the Republican witness, indicated, could pose challenges in terms of what are exactly the criteria for abuse of power. And House Republicans on that committee pointed out that if we're going to talk about abuse of power in a loose sense that's not connected with the criminal law, we're going to have to perhaps talk about how past presidents, including perhaps President Obama, have abused their power. So there are real challenges here for the Democrats as they draft articles of impeachment.
All right, so that's the articles. What about the members themselves, the votes, Melanie? Earlier today on CNN, the House Majority Whip, Jim Clyburn, said that he expects Democrats to have a few defectors, people who will vote against impeaching the president. Both he and Speaker Pelosi have said that they're not pushing their colleagues to support it, but still, they have to know most are on board, or else Pelosi wouldn't be going forward, correct?
You're absolutely right. Pelosi would not go forward with this or put articles on the floor if she thought they would fail. She has her finger on the pulse of her caucus, and she has known exactly when to pull the trigger in each of the steps that we've seen, whether it was moving forward with the inquiry or, as yesterday she said, we're going to move ahead with articles of impeachment. Now, that being said, there is a bit of a challenge for Democratic leaders here because they said they're not going to whip this. It's going to be a vote of conscience. They don't want to force members into impeachment, but at the same time, they want to limit defections as much as possible because Republicans are going to seize on that to say that this was a bipartisan vote against impeachment. They don't have any Republicans voting with them. And so they need to craft those articles in a way that all of their members are comfortable with.
Melanie, thank you for that. Stephen Griffin, nice to have you on. Let's move on. Coming up, facing off with the president and reporters who question her motives, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi is in the midst of one of the biggest moments of her storied career, and we'll talk to her daughter Christine next.